Every family has one secret they never speak of. I need to stop before I begin, because what I'm about to tell you is the part of this story I almost didn't tell, the part I sat with for 6 weeks before I found the words, the part that made my brother call me at midnight when I told him I was going to share it and say, "Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure the world is ready for this?" I told him I didn't know, but I knew that we were, and sometimes that has to be enough. So, here it is. The 5th letter, the one nobody wanted to touch, the one that sat in that box for 4 months while the rest of us were learning how to breathe again, the one addressed to the man who betrayed my father, his own brother, my uncle, the man who stole from him, the man who built an empire on a forged signature and a stolen dream and 30 years of silence that my father chose over destruction. My father left him a letter too. Of course he did, because that was who my father was, a man who could not leave this world with anything unfinished. Even this, even him. I want you to think about that for a moment before I continue. The man who wronged you most in your entire life. The one who took something from you that you can never fully get back. Would you write them a letter? Would you have anything left to say? My father did. 4 pages, in the same shaking hand, with the same careful truth. And what he wrote inside those 4 pages is the reason I believe that my father was not just a good man. He was something that most of us will spend our entire lives trying to become and never quite get there. He was free, completely, utterly, devastatingly free. Let me tell you about my uncle first, because you have heard my version of him for 4 weeks now. The villain, the betrayer, the man who stole, the man who stood at a funeral and gave a speech about brotherhood while standing on land that didn't belong to him. But there is another version. There always is. My uncle was born first, the eldest son. In our family, in our culture, the eldest son carries a different kind of weight than any of the others. He carries the expectation of greatness. He carries the fear of disappointing a father who sacrificed everything so that his sons could have more than he did. My uncle was not born cruel. He was born afraid. Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of being less than what was expected. Afraid of watching his younger brother quieter, steadier, more loved in the way that gentle people are always more loved, surpass him simply by being exactly who he was. My father never tried to surpass anyone. He just lived, fully, honestly. And that was threatening to a man who had spent his entire life trying to perform greatness instead of simply being good. I am not telling you this to excuse what he did. There is no excuse. What he did was wrong. Completely, irreversibly wrong. I am telling you this because my father understood it. And understanding it is what made the letter possible. My uncle received the letter on a Thursday morning. My mother had posted it on a Wednesday. He called that same evening. I wasn't there for the call. My mother told me about it afterwards, sitting in the garden with the roses behind her that my uncle had come and cut the week before. She said he didn't speak for almost 2 full minutes after she answered. She waited. She had always been good at waiting. She said she could hear him breathing, could hear him trying to find the entry point into a conversation that had been 30 years in the making. Finally, he said, "Did you know what was in my letter?" My mother said, "No, he wrote yours alone. The way he wrote all of them." My uncle was quiet again. Then he said, "He shouldn't have written it. I didn't deserve it." My mother said, "No, you didn't. But he wrote it anyway. That was his way. It was always his way." Another silence. And then my uncle said something that my mother repeated to me word for word because she said it was the most honest thing she had ever heard him say in 40 years of knowing him. He said, "I have been waiting my entire life for someone to be angry at me the way I deserved. I thought it would be him. I always thought it would be him." My mother said, "He was never going to give you that. You knew him. You knew he was never going to give you that." And my uncle said, "I know. That was the worst part. Every single day, for 30 years, that was the worst part." My mother invited him to the garden, not immediately. She thought about it for a week. She talked to us about it. My brother said nothing for a long time and then said, "Whatever you decide, I will support." My sister said, "Papa would want it." I said, "I need to read the letter first." My mother looked at me. She said, "You want to read it?" I said, "I need to understand what Papa said to him before I can sit across from him in that garden and not say something that would undo everything Papa was trying to do." My mother went inside. She came back with a photograph of the letter. She had photographed each page before she posted it. Of course she had. She was always the most prepared person in any room. I read my father's letter to the man who betrayed him sitting in my car, in the same way my sister had read hers. Parked. Still. Facing something. It took me a long time to get through it. Not because it was long, because every line required something from me that I wasn't sure I had. My father began, "Brother, I have called you that every day of my life. I will call you that now, not because you earned it in these last 30 years, but because you earned it in the 30 before that. And I have decided that what you were, before you became afraid, is more true than what you did when the fear won. I need you to hear that. Before anything else, I need you to know that I have never stopped seeing the person you were before the person you became. That boy is still in there. I know he is, because I knew him better than anyone, and he was the best friend I ever had." I had to stop reading after that paragraph. I sat in the car and I looked at the roof and I breathed for a long time, because I had spent 5 months thinking about my uncle as a single thing. The betrayer, the thief, the man who stole, and my father from his hospital bed with his shaking hands, with whatever time he had left, had refused to reduce him, refused to make him only the worst thing he had ever done. And in doing so, my father had done something that I am not sure I am capable of. He had loved someone all the way through their failure, all the way through 30 years of theft and silence and fake tears at a funeral. He had looked at all of that and still found the boy who was his best friend before the fear took over. I don't know how you do that. I genuinely don't know how a person does that. But I know that I want to. For the rest of my life, I want to try. My father continued. He wrote, "I know what you did. I have always known. I found out 2 years after it happened. Not from a document, not from a lawyer, from you. You told me yourself. You don't remember. You were drunk. It was late. We were sitting in the kitchen of the house you had built on what you took from me, and you said something that you thought was nothing. A casual thing, a throwaway sentence about how the business started. You got one detail wrong. One specific detail that only the person who forged the signature would get wrong. And I knew, in that moment, sitting across from you, watching you laugh about something else entirely, I knew. And I made a decision in that kitchen in that moment with you sitting right there, not knowing what I knew. I decided that I was not going to become the kind of man who destroys his brother. Not because you deserved protection, but because I deserved peace. And destroying you would have destroyed every good thing I had left. So I chose the good things. I chose your children who are innocent. I chose your wife who doesn't know. I chose my own children who were watching everything. I chose my garden and my window and my Sunday dinners. I chose peace over justice. And for 20 years I have not regretted it. Not once. Then my father wrote something that made me put the phone down and press both hands flat against the steering wheel and just hold on. He wrote, "But I need to tell you something that I have never told anyone. Not your sister-in-law, not my children, not the lawyer, nobody. There were mornings, not many, but some, when I hated you. Not the mild dislike that polite people call hatred to soften it. Real hatred, the kind that sits in your chest, like something swallowed wrong and won't go down and won't come up and just stays there burning. There were mornings when I watched you pull into our parents' driveway in a car I had paid for without knowing, and I wanted to burn everything down. I want you to know that. I want you to know that I was not a saint. I was a man who chose better than his worst morning. That is all any of us can do. Choose better than our worst morning. You chose worse. For 30 years you chose worse. But I am not writing this letter to condemn you for that. I am writing it because I am leaving, and I cannot leave with hatred in my chest. Not even the real kind. Not even the kind that burns. I am leaving it here, in this letter with you. Take it. It was always more yours than mine." My father ended the letter with 2 things. First, a question. He wrote, "Do you remember the summer we were boys and we built a raft out of wood we found at the edge of the river? It took us 3 weeks. It was terrible. It sank in 4 minutes. We stood on the riverbank soaking wet and laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. And you said, 'We'll build a better one next time.' And I said, 'Yes, we will,' and we never did. Life got in the way, and then other things got in the way, and there was never a next time. I want you to remember that raft. Not what came after, not the 30 years, the raft, the river, the 4 minutes, the laughing. That was real too. It was just as real as everything else, maybe more. And then the second thing, the last line of the last page, in the shakiest handwriting of all, as if he saved his last strength for it. He wrote, "The roses need cutting back in October. I used to do it myself. I thought maybe this year you could do it for me. Not as payment, not as penance, just as a brother. The way you used to do things for me before you forgot that that was who you were. Come to the garden. I'll be there. I'm always there." My uncle came to the garden on a Saturday morning in October. He drove himself. He arrived at 9 in the morning with a pair of garden shears he had bought new because he didn't own any, and he didn't want to ask to borrow ours. My mother opened the door. They looked at each other for a long time. There were no words for a while. There didn't need to be. Some conversations have already happened on paper before the people in them are standing in the same room. My mother stepped aside. He walked through the house to the back door and into the garden. He stood there for a moment looking at the roses. Then he looked at the window my father used to sit at for a long time. We were all inside watching. None of us went out. This was not our moment. This was between two brothers. One of them standing in a garden with new shears and 30 years of shame. The other one somewhere in the roses and the light and the particular stillness of a garden that has been loved for a very long time by someone who is no longer there to love it. My uncle stood there for a long time, and then he knelt down beside the first rose bush, and he started cutting. Slowly, carefully, the way you do something when you are trying to do it right for the first time. The way you do something when you know it might be the most important thing you have done in years. He cut every rose back. All of them. It took him 2 hours. When he was finished, he stood up and looked at the garden. And then he looked at the window again, and he nodded. Just once. The way you nod at someone you can't see but know is watching. He came back inside. My mother had made tea. We sat around the kitchen table, all of us, for the first time in 2 years. Nobody said anything about the letters. Nobody said anything about the money or the land or the forged signature. My sister asked him about his grandchildren. He asked my brother about his work. We ate biscuits. We drank tea. We sat in that kitchen for 3 hours talking about nothing and everything, the way families do when they have survived something they were not sure they would survive. And at some point, I don't know exactly when, because it happened slowly, the way the most important things always do. It stopped feeling like a performance. It stopped feeling like an effort. It just felt like a kitchen and a family and an ordinary Saturday, which is the most extraordinary thing of all. I have thought about my father every day since, not with grief anymore, with something closer to instruction, because he left us more than property and justice, and freed secrets and healed wounds. He left us a way of being, a set of choices demonstrated quietly over 30 years, without ever once asking us to notice. Don't destroy people, build things instead. Don't carry hatred. Put it in a letter and give it back. Remember the raft. Remember the 4 minutes. Remember the laughing. Cut the roses back in October. Show up to the garden. Be there, even when you can't be seen. Especially then. I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it before you answer. Is there someone in your life who you have reduced to the worst thing they ever did? Så får ni works is your memory only as their favorite, only as their betrayal, only as the thing they did that hurt you most. Is there a raft somewhere in your history with them that you have forgotten? A river, a 4 minutes, a laughing so hard you couldn't breathe. I am not asking you to forgive what they did. My father didn't pretend what his brother did was acceptable. He documented it. He protected his family from it. He made sure justice came. But he also remembered the raft. He held both things at the same time, the harm and the love, the betrayal and the boy. Can you do that? Can I? I don't know yet, but I am trying every single day. I am trying. Tell me in the comments tonight, is there someone in your life you have never been able to hold both versions of? The version shall hurt you, and the version you love it before it hurt you. Don't have to have forgiven them. You don't have to be anywhere near that. Just tell me, if there was a raft, if there was a river, if there was a 4 minutes where everything was fine and you were both laughing and the world was simple and good and neither of you knew yet what was coming, tell me about the raft. I will read every single one. I always do. Part 6 comes next week. The 6th letter. I haven't talked about it yet because I didn't know how. The 6th letter was addressed to me. I found out last week that I have been telling this story for 5 weeks without knowing what my own letter said. Because I couldn't open it, I tried 11 times. I got as far as breaking the seal twice. Both times I put it back down. Both times I walked away. Last Tuesday night at 11:47 p.m. I finally read it. All 4 pages. And when I finished, I sat in the dark for a long time. And then I picked up my phone. And I started writing this. Because he asked me to. In the last paragraph of the last page of my letter, he asked me to tell the story. He said, "You were always the one who could find words for things that had no words. Use them. Tell our story. Not the perfect version, the real one. With all the mess and the silence and the shame and the love that holds all of it together anyway. Tell it. Someone out there needs to hear it. I know because I needed to hear it too, and there was no one to tell it to me. So I had to live it instead. You don't have to live it. You just have to say it. So say it, and don't stop until it's done." Part 6. Next week. I'll tell you what he said to me, all of it, every word. Subscribe. Don't miss it. This is the one that changes everything.